All right, so we're on an impromptu video here for the benefit of all of us. And if I had 5 more elementary principals here, I'd pull them into the conversation too. And Tom and Tami just happened to be here. So we're continuing the conversation after our data dive. And at the data dive, everyone had a chance to get a snapshot of what it might look like to have a team conversation with all the stakeholders looking at data and North Star and going deeper and looking at it classroom by classroom and looking at student by student and the student needs. And so we were talking afterwards, and we were recognizing that there's probably 18 different examples right now of the next steps at each of our 18 buildings, and none of those are wrong, but we thought, why not? So then we were talking about, I asked Tami, what are your next steps? What's your preliminary plan here for the next 2 weeks from this point on? Then I asked Tom the same thing, and when they shared, just took a couple minutes and shared what their plan was, I thought, wow, we got to get those examples out there, and there's probably 16 other examples that might have some things in common, but might have some own unique things, but let's start sharing that out. And we decided we didn't want to wait till next Wednesday principal meetings. Let's push this out now as 2 examples, knowing that the other 16 are great as well, but just trying to share ideas. So my first question is directed to Tami. Tami, just in a few minutes, if you could summarize here on Friday the 14th of September, if you could summarize, looking ahead the next 2 weeks, what's your preliminary plan for next steps in terms of how to move towards this vision of some data conversations in year 1 surrounding North Star?
So in talking with my team quickly and looking at, we looked at it over 2 weeks, knowing that everything can't happen next week. I was a building last year that had K1 and 2 teachers trained a little bit using North Star, and so our plan was to start next week looking with our stakeholder team and individual classrooms in first grade to do that during their prep time over 3 days. Wednesday we have an all-day meeting, so it won't be that day. Meet with them classroom by classroom and go through their data, which is pretty well in place because of the reading recovery things needed to be happening, and we already know who reading recovery kids are for those interventions. So we just really need to finish out looking at the data and looking at what other kids might need interventions in first grade. But those teachers do not know all the components that we saw today on clicking on the beyond text leveling, the concepts of print, or high frequency words. So just to play around with each classroom to say, here's looks like a group of kids, here's a group of kids that might need that intervention, and do that with first grade. And then maybe in the conversations with them, there might be one intervention to do as a grade level, but each individual teacher gets a chance to look at their kids a little deeper using the data. Mm-hmm. And then move to second grade and do the same kind of format with them. They also did some interventions last year in second grade, so they're used to looking at North Star. They did a high frequency word intervention, so I think it would be sort of the same conversation with them, and make sure the Title I person and another person who will be offering LLI is in on that conversation with second grade. And we'll probably use prep time for that too, classroom by classroom, so we can quickly get that done next week.
So I'm going to interrupt you. So in the first week, your hope is to get through which grades?
K1 and 2.
K1 and 2.
Because they've had familiarity with using North Star.
Yep, K1 and 2, classroom by classroom during prep time over the course of the week. That's the goal.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the following week, 3, 4, and 5 are starting their MAP testing, and so their intervention blocks really weren't going to start anyway. And so 3, 4, and 5 the following week will meet as grade level teams and pull back some of those graphs to show here's your whole grade level, so we can see where some gaps are as a grade level, and then look at individual classrooms and do the text leveling ranking, so that they will leave those meetings at least knowing here's some ideas for guided reading groups, but then show them a couple other ways that they can dig deeper for some interventions. And then we probably won't get to any other interventions until after October, where we put some more data in and they get a chance to play around with it, because they're not used to North Star, but we'll show them a couple tricks and have them leave with here's your guided reading groups, and have some interventions in place for those really high need kids.
So the conversations in the second week, grades 3, 4, and 5, and more of grade level type conversations.
And that's coming from a Westview perspective. I only have 3 sections of each grade level, so
a
it's
smaller school, and also a school that has
kids.
some exposure to North Star already.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's our snapshot. One snapshot out of 18, but wanted to share those ideas out. Okay. Anything else that you would add to
No,
that?
just can't wait to hear everybody else's ideas on Wednesday.
Okay, perfect. So then Tom's here, and if you're looking at our 18 schools, Rosemont Elementary is a cohort 2 school. So asking Tom the same question, as of now, Friday the 14th of September, looking at the next 2 weeks, what's Rosemont's preliminary plan to start taking steps in this direction?
Right. So because we're a cohort 2, no exposure to North Star. So our approach in the conversation with our small group team afterwards was our teachers are really excited about just getting into the data. So we've done all this work getting the data. Let's get into the data. We dabbled in progress monitoring last year. We're a Title I school, so we have a lot of interventionists in classrooms right now. So our goal is to get teams to look at the data right away next week. So we called a team meeting already. Had the secretaries put out a notice saying we're having a team meeting or a staff meeting on Tuesday in the computer lab. We're going to do a little homework ahead of time, and we thought that the two pieces of information that are probably the most important at this point for classroom teachers is the F&P text leveling in rank order by classroom, and then the text leveling bar graph, the yellow bar graph. So we're going to pre-print those on color so the teachers aren't printing those, and we'll have those ready for teachers. And the staff meeting will roll out with the computers off, but ready
Hands
to go.
above the head, you said.
Hands above the head, nobody can touch them. Our literacy RTI leader, Jenny Seeperside, is a 5th grade teacher right now, and what she'll do is present her data to the team so that they have an idea of what it looks like. Again, they've had a snapshot of it
And they'll see her navigate North Star.
and have her see it, and then notice some gaps in some of her students. So maybe they can read at a certain level, but maybe there might be some other variables that are preventing them from going further in their literacy growth. And just have her discuss that for about 15 minutes. And then have everybody log in together uniformly so everybody has a common understanding of how to go into that, how to find their classroom, and then how to find each of the various tests that are within that. And then find those two areas that we've already printed for them. Again, tell them not to print them and see if they can see any gaps within those areas and begin the conversation. The purpose then is that, hopefully, is that the teachers then can start looking into further assessments and find out what other areas might be really important to look at each student to find out if there are some gaps in some areas that they can start to intervene with right now as a classroom teacher, and then more pointedly be able to bring those to the table when we do a progress monitoring session. And it will be a little shorter than the way in which we did it last year because we've already put Title I and special education teachers into a push-in model right now into the classrooms. So that now that they're already there, let's find out what are we going to do with those students based on the data. So we're doing it a little differently, not trying to align interventionists, but trying to align students with the interventionists that are already in the classroom.
Okay. So the first step, middle of next week, is that whole group in the lab walking through that, both seeing it modeled, talking about it, and having those printouts. And then you start from there going to those deeper conversations gradually of, okay, what are we going to do for these students?
Right.
Okay.
And then in the future, I see us using a more traditional or more fishbowl progress monitoring like meeting that was demonstrated today, probably in the second round. But for right now, having the teachers really use the data that they work so hard to get ready to put into the system.
Yeah, and get familiar with North Star.
Yep.
Okay. So both of these examples are great. We ended the meeting today talking about that we just have to start. Every school's in a different place. We have to start along the journey, and it's a learn by doing. So these are two examples of how each of these schools are going to start the conversations, and then it'll evolve over time. So we wanted to share these out. I don't know if there's anything else that either one of you wanted to add.
Can't wait to hear the other 16 ideas.
So we want to hear the other 16 stories, but we wanted to push these out now because we know people's wheels are turning this weekend, today, and moving into the weekend, looking ahead into next week. So we want to get this link out as soon as possible.